What was your biggest shit, my parents were right moment? When I was in high school, I worked part-time in a local sporting goods store. I got hired pretty young and there was a core group of college guys who had been there for a while. They welcomed me into the team and we would hang out sometimes outside of work, but since I was drastically younger, I couldn't join them at the bar or anything. A couple years later, when I was around 16, 3 of the guys moved into a house together and decided to throw a huge house party and kegger. I was the only underagger from work invited and like any high schooler, I desperately wanted to go to the cool college party. My sister is much older than me and tried every trick in the book in high school, so there wasn't much I could get away with. There was no chance of sneaking out or lying about going to so-and-so's. Instead, I took a different approach. Hey mom, the guys at work are throwing a party on Saturday and they invited me. I know there will be drinking and I know they're much older, but these are my buddies and I think it would be really fun. Mom, sure, no problem. But when the cops come, just run down the block to the McDonald's and I'll pick you up there. You don't want your buddies to get caught selling beer to a minor. I laughed it off, mostly because I was just so excited about actually being able to go. I took the bus to the party and paid my $5 like everyone else. I hung out mostly with my work friends and had a few beers, though when I tried to go to the washroom for a leak, they were all taken. So I went out to the backyard and pissed in the bushes. When I see the flashing lights on the side of the neighbor's house, I hopped the fence, ran through the neighbor's yard and down the street to the McDonald's. The entire 10 minutes I sat there waiting for my mom to pick me up, I was thinking, how did she know? How did she know? There's about 0.5% of me that believes she's the one who called the cops. Edit, whoa, this has blown up a bit. Since lots of people are commenting on US drinking ages, I should clarify that this is in Canada, age 19 in Ontario, and it's not as big of a deal to get caught underage drinking. I just didn't want my buddies to get a fine, since the real penalty is on those selling alcohol to minors. Not all your friends need to be forever friends, some people are just desired to be your friend for that right time in your life. It was cold and I did need a jacket. But I'll be damned if I'm going to admit that to my mom. Take care of your teeth. After a breakup with my first real boyfriend, my dad told me that there is no greater emotional pain than seeing your child hurting. Damn. A couple of decades later, I realized he's right. My dad encouraged me not to buy a house with my at the time girlfriend and instead save my money and buy one on my own or with my brother. Obviously I didn't listen, pissed away probably $30,000 and about 5 years of my early 20s. I should have listened. Start saving as soon as you can. You don't have as much money as you think you do. Told me that when I had a part-time job whilst living at home. Thought I was loaded until I moved out and realized how expensive life is. My grandmother didn't like my boyfriend, said he was lazy, arrogant, and using me. A couple of months after college, when I'm making him wake up after partying all night so I can drive him to work on time, I realized, shit. She's right. Time flies faster than you think. A little while after I had finally got my ex out of my life for good. They had been against our relationship from day one. My mum enjoyed that conversation. I distinctly remember telling my mom, I don't get why I'm too young to know what love is. I'm 16, I'm not a kid. Looking back on that relationship, I'm amazed she didn't laugh in my face. Use condoms, son. Now I'm father. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. You're gonna regret all this slacking off. Jacking. You really shouldn't spend money if it's not in your bank account. Credit cards. Don't start smoking, it's addicting and expensive. Oh, I wish I listened to them. There will come a day when I wish I can take afternoon naps every day. Learn to cook. When I was in the army I got sick and freaking tired of all my soldiers marrying the first stripper to cook them a meal. We had a week where all our equipment was in reset for some stupid reason, so we were making up training events. I went to my 1SG and said I'm going to trade these guys back to apartment and teach them how to cook, tie a tie, wear a suit, all that shit that these idiots don't know how to do. He agreed so fast it was almost sad. Huge success. Taught them a bunch of simple stovetop stuff, how to dress like a freaking adult. And I stopped having to explain to 18-year-olds why giving power of attorney to a 35-year-old stripper is a terrible idea every week. When I was 16, I was amazed at how little my parents knew. 4 years later I couldn't believe how much they learned. Slightly butchered Mark Twain quote, "I am 40 now and I find myself telling my children that I was a kid like them once, and then the dawning of my dad saying the same thing to me. At that point I realized that they are going to make their own mistakes and learn lessons that I had to learn for myself. My job is to warn, guide, and be there when they make mistakes. Mainly to point and laugh. Edit to give credit unquote. Thank you /Shozu Essays for the reminder." When they warned me how easy it is to stay in a comfortable situation rather than the right one. Wasted a lot of time because I was cozy with the routine. Then I looked up and realized I had spent 3 years being comfortable. As a kid, I was always fascinated, obsessed, even, with being an adult. Being college educated, living on my own, making my own money, etc. My parents always told me, don't wish your life away. Adult life isn't as easy and fun as it looks. I've since learned that is a severe understatement. Back in high school I got caught smoking weed a couple of times. After getting busted, my dad saged, "Watch, now that you aren't smoking, see if your smoking pals will stick around." Sure enough, those pals didn't stick around. Yeah, I had to have this talk with my younger brother, but in that case I was wrong. He used to hang out with a bunch of people and they all got into weed and general bad shit. He eventually had to go sober and I told him, now that you're not blazing all of the time, let's see who your real friends are. Holy shit, I was so freaking wrong. Those 3 to 4 kids he used to hang around with did not drop no matter what I said. Their crew of teenagers supported each other so that they all eventually quit hard drugs and got jobs. They supported and pushed each other through a death of one's older brother, suicide attempts, rehab, and school. One is now in the sales industry, the other is in the Air Force, another in the Army, another in construction, my brother in comp sci. For the most part, it is true that the only thing keeping some potheads together is weed, but in my younger brother's case, I was dead set wrong. It took a couple years but they all really pulled through together. They really would die for each other. Edit, for some clarification, weed was their gateway drug. They did a lot of worse things apart from hard drugs too. Edit 2, people are clearly offended at the gateway drug comment, so I'll clarify. Weed itself is not a gateway drug. Weed doesn't make you automatically do harder drugs because you're a fiend itching for a better high. I smoke weed and support federal legalization, so people please stop with the correctness comments. In this case, my brother and his friends had other issues that they tried to hide with weed, and through weed, they ended up trying to get higher and higher to forget about their problems. They probably would have done hard drugs even if they never smoked weed. However, they smoked weed and were introduced to that high and steadily took harder drugs over time. Happy? Edit 3, or man, hearing my brother laugh and yell obscene curses while he plays R6 Siege and CSGO makes me want to cry. When your ex sends you texts threatening your life, don't write it off as a bluff or scare tactic. Get the restraining order. It will come in handy when your ex comes crawling through your window at 2 AM ready to slice your throat. I was one of those artsy but also academic kids. I wanted to be a professional artist, but still applied only to liberal arts colleges because I wanted to have an intellectual experience or some such naive notion. While visiting a school, my father sat next to me as I waited for my interview in the admissions office and said, "I don't think you should go here. I looked at the course catalog and the biology program here is too molecular for you. My father had never said much about any potential career for me. Both my parents had their own lives and just had a whatever makes you happy attitude. It was a total non sequitur for me and, of course, I completely blew him off. He never mentioned anything like it again. I did pursue my art career and after 2 years I left my liberal arts college to go to art school. However, I returned to the original school after realizing I would need a real job to support myself while I made my art, likely in an art gallery. Returning started an odd cascade of events that eventually landed me, 10 years later, starting my PhD in evolutionary biology. 15 years later I am, indeed, an evolutionary biologist with a good career and I do think of this as my calling. I work with some molecular biologists for the medical part of my research, but it's true that this field feels very foreign to me and not interesting in the way my own is. I asked my dad one day, "So, you knew it all along, huh?" He said, "Yes, but I knew it had to be your decision."